My game of the day from round 3 of the Olympiad in Baku is from the Ukraine-Germany match. So already 2 strong teams facing each other in round 3. And this is the board 4 encounter between Andrei Volokitin, representing the Ukraine, and Daniel Fridman, playing for Germany. Volokitin is 30 years old, a very dangerous attacking player. And I think we have an interesting clash of styles here. Fridman is more conservative, more orthodox, more solid in his play. Plays the Caro-Kann, a solid opening, but Volokitin keeps the tension with the advanced variation. And Volokitin is a specialist in this particular system, the short variation with bishop e2, named after Nigel Short, who developed this system in the late 80s and early 90s. It's a dangerous system. You can see that the pawn structure is very much like a French, this locked central structure. But the difference, of course, is that the bishop is outside the pawn chain, which, well, in certain circumstances can be very good, of course. The bishop finds a nice diagonal. The only problem is that when black breaks, plays the normal break with c5 to attack white's centre, that this diagonal is somewhat weakened. The bishop, in that case, often belongs on d7. And it's very interesting to see how white tries to exploit this. So bishop e3. White is playing with pieces here. The other thing about playing the bishop out so early is that it means that black hasn't spent any time developing the king side. And the other thing about playing the bishop to f5 is that when black takes on d4, then of course that bishop is somewhat vulnerable to attack. So all in all, this adds up to, I think from a practical point of view, quite a difficult position for black to play. However, if the king escapes to the side of the board, then black is left with a very healthy pawn structure. So let's see how things develop. Castles. So white's king is safe at the side of the board, black's king stuck in the middle. This is the major theme of the game. And now bishop b5. So here we go. You can see already black experiences problems on this diagonal, this somewhat weakened diagonal. And it's not so easy for black to develop. Of course, this knight can't move because knight on c6 would be en prise. Now Volokitin has some experience with this position and previously has faced a6 and rook c8. A6 is probably the most practical move, just kind of clearing things up on this diagonal very quickly. But there's no doubt that white has the initiative. For example, pawn takes, then perhaps c4 with the idea of bringing out the queen to a4. Or knight takes c6. This was played, well, Volokitin has had this position before. And you can see that black structure has been damaged already. Here, Volokitin once played c3, but f4, as Caruana played a couple of months ago, is probably the most sensible move here. And white is slightly better pawn structure. Volokitin has also faced rook c8 and, well, got a very decent position against Maxime Vacher-Legrave. So Volokitin is a real expert. In this game, Fridman thought for almost half an hour and just dropped the bishop back to g6. A very cool move, bringing the bishop out of trouble, but of course that's one more move where he isn't developing his king side, so very double-edged. And c4 played by Volokitin, very natural move, trying to open up the centre where black's king is and clearing a path potentially for the queen to come to a4. a6 played, attacking the bishop. One could take on c6. Aronian played like this once, but c takes d5 from Volokitin. Now, if pawn takes bishop, then we recapture the piece and play a4. Just opening things up on the queen side. Very dangerous initiative for white. But Fridman played queen takes d5. Wow, I mean, this is really double-edged. Bringing the queen out, and Volokitin played knight c3, attacking the queen. So black has won a pawn, but that queen is hanging around in the middle of the board. Black's king still looks rather vulnerable. I like the way the Ukrainian played now, very calmly, just maintaining the bishop on this diagonal, and now just simply develop pieces. Rook c1, pressure on the c file, potential pressure on c6 as well, and black very congested, needs to bring this knight out in order to develop. So Fridman played knight f5, and now here there are several very attractive moves for white. Maybe queen b3, that's a possibility. Perhaps taking on c6 and queen a4, that's another possibility. But, well, Volokitin invested half an hour himself here, and I think this was exactly the right position to do it, because it's obviously absolutely critical position, where for both sides, one false move can mean either white's initiative disappears and black is fine, or if black makes an incorrect step, he can be blown away. Knight takes c6 played, recaptured. Knight e2 very coolly played, so the knight steps out of the way, opening up an attack on the c6 pawn. And it's very hard for black to defend that successfully, actually. So Fridman just took the bishop on e3. Now rook takes c6. This was obviously calculated when Volokitin went in for this big think. Okay, this takes serious calculation. If knight takes queen, well, I know this double attack, rook takes rook, looks very attractive, but actually the king will escape. Instead, white takes on e6, double check. The king goes to the side, and then simply rook takes queen. Now, for the moment, white is a piece down, but rook takes knight threatened, and in fact, black can't do anything about this. In which case, white will be a pawn up in an endgame with a strong attack against black's king. The problem is this knight cannot escape, because if knight takes pawn, then check and check on c1 will win the rook on c8. So, coming back to this position, black has to step out of the way with the king. Perhaps hoping to come up to f6. Pawn takes. And now here, well, already extremely difficult for black. You'll notice that pawn recapture opens up the f file. Well, my computer tells me that black should trade on c6 and play f5. Obviously, queen d7 mate threatened, so f5 gives the king some room on f6. But I mean, this is such a difficult position to defend. White isn't even any material down, and has just a storming initiative. Apparently this is the way for black to play, but now either queen b3 or queen f3. I mean, I think in practice this is impossible for black to defend, but he has a chance. In any case, Fridman played queen takes e3 check, and now it's looking pretty bad. Queen d7 mate threatened again, and well, this is interesting actually. Let's see what happens if black tries to defend in the way that we just saw with f5. Here, this idea with exchanging off the bishop simply doesn't work. Because of knight takes e6, you can see the effect it has taking this pawn, because the e-file is now open for a pin. Fridman tried queen d3, but then came queen a4. Now, well, let's try this move f5 again. You can see that black's king is just getting hounded. Queen h4 check. This is good fun. Let's have a look at this. If queen g5, then the queen swings back into the middle, and queen b6. And there's going to be no real defence to a discovered attack. Or in this position, king e5 rather. And now this is good fun. Having dragged the king to the middle, then the rook can come back. So yeah, queen takes knight will be met by queen d4 mate. That's rather pretty. And if bishop c5, this is a very attractive move. Knight g1, threatening a deadly check on f3. So white is having fun here. The game ended e5, rook d1, and now queen b4 check forces mate. Fridman resigned in this position because if king f6, then check, and bishop d7 mate, very attractive, or king e6, check again, and queen h4. Well, a very nice attacking game from Andrei Volokitin, and that win gave the Ukraine a 2.5, 1.5 victory over Germany. And Ukraine's reward for that victory is a pairing against Russia in the next round. That's going to be the one to watch. Two big beasts meeting each other in round 4. Can't wait for that one. There were a few surprises today, actually. Azerbaijan convincingly defeated Hungary 3-1. So the host nation feeling very good about themselves with that one. In the women's event, China only drew 2-2 with Vietnam. That's an incredible result. So already they've dropped a draw. Anyway, I look forward to round 4, and do join me for another report then.